Hello and welcome to the show. You're watching Speed News on WION World is One. I'm your host for this broadcast. My name is Isha Hanspal. In the next 30 minutes, we will cover all the top stories that we are tracking on WION today. Let's begin. UN Secretary-General António Guterres has reiterated his opposition to any forced transfer of population, including in the Gaza Strip. This stance was reaffirmed by Farhan Haq, the deputy spokesman for the UN Secretary-General, during a press conference. The comments came in response to US President Donald Trump's statement that Palestinians who are forcibly displaced from Gaza should not be allowed to return once reconstruction is complete. Israel has threatened to launch a new war on Gaza and implement US President Donald Trump's plan to displace Palestinians if the group does not release captives this weekend. Now, the remarks by Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz came shortly after Palestinian group Hamas said that it would not bow down to US and Israeli threats over the release of captives under a fragile truce deal. Now, the deal has largely halted more than 15 months of fighting and seen Israeli captives released in small groups in exchange for Palestinians in Israeli custody. But the deal, which is currently in its 42nd day first phase, has come under increasing strain following Trump's comments on his plan for the besieged enclave. US President Donald Trump has revealed that he is expected to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Saudi Arabia for Ukraine peace talks after a surprise phone call between the two leaders. The move sparked concerns that Ukraine will be left out of talks on its own fate after Trump said Kyiv's wish to join NATO was not practical, a key demand of Russia's. Trump also predicted a ceasefire in Ukraine in the near future, adding that the country needs fresh elections at some point. A US judge has lifted a freeze on a buyout plan for federal workers, granting a victory to President Donald Trump in his efforts to reduce the government workforce. US District Judge George O'Toole lifted his restraining order on the mass buyout plan, which had been temporarily paused last week. Now, the decision allows the buyout plan to proceed, potentially leading to a significant reduction in the federal workforce. Labor unions representing federal employees had filed suit to block the scheme that encouraged federal workers to quit. In an email titled "Fork in the Road," the more than 2 million US government employees were given an offer to leave with 8 months' pay or risk being fired in future cull. The White House says that more than 65,000 federal employees have signed on to the buyout offer from the Office of Personnel Management. O'Toole, an appointee of President Bill Clinton, said the unions lacked the standing to bring the suit and his court did not have the jurisdiction over the matter. Tulsi Gabbard has been sworn as the Director of National Intelligence under President Donald Trump, and this after her confirmation, which passed the Senate by a narrow 52-48 vote. At the swearing-in ceremony, President Donald Trump praised Gabbard as a quote-unquote woman of great common sense and entrusted her with overseeing reforms to the U.S. intelligence community. Now, Gabbard, who left the Democratic Party in 2022 and joined the Republican Party in 2024, expressed her commitment to refocusing the intelligence community and ensuring the safety and security of Americans. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed in Washington, D.C. for talks with US President Donald Trump at the White House. The two leaders are expected to hold talks on tariff cuts, trade and recent deportation of Indians from the US. The Trump administration has complained that India has high tariffs that lock out US imports. PM Modi is expected to propose increased energy and defense imports during his two-day visit. Shortly after landing in Washington, D.C., Prime Minister Modi met with newly appointed Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. The U.S. Justice Department has filed a lawsuit against New York's Attorney General and Governor over the state's law allowing undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. The lawsuit was announced by Attorney General Pam Bondi in her first press conference since taking office, alongside Tammy Nobles, whose daughter was tragically killed by an undocumented immigrant in Maryland in 2022. Bondi argued that the New York law violates a federal immigration law and poses a threat to public safety. A grenade explosion at a bar in Grenoble, France, has left 12 people wounded, with 2 in critical condition. Authorities say that the suspect threw a grenade into the crowded bar in the Olympic Village neighborhood and fled the scene. It claimed that investigators have not identified a motive yet, but don't believe it's a terrorist attack. Instead, they're exploring possible connection to drug trafficking, as some accounts suggest the suspect was also carrying a Kalashnikov assault rifle. A U.S. Navy trawler jet crashed into San Diego Bay in California. Fortunately, both pilots ejected safely from the aircraft before it hit the water. According to Lieutenant Daniel Moen of San Diego Harbor Police Department, locals recovered the 2 pilots from the water. The pilots were then taken to a local hospital for medical assessment and are currently in stable condition. The U.S. Navy has confirmed that the jet was attempting to land at Naval Air Station North Island when it crashed. The incident has raised concerns about the safety of military operations in the area. The U.S. Navy is working to determine the cause of the crash and to ensure that similar incidents do not occur in the future. The Italian government has denied accusations that it used military-grade spyware to spy on journalists and migrant activists. The denial comes after WhatsApp informed dozens of people across the European Union that their phones had been targeted in a spyware attack. At least 7 Italian cell phones were apparently hacked using technology from Israeli cyber firm Paragon Solutions. The targeted individuals included journalists and migrant activists who have been critical of the government. The Italian government confirmed that it had a contract with Paragon Solutions to provide intelligence gathering capabilities to fight terrorism and other threats to national security. However, it insisted that the law was respected and denied that the government has used the technology to spy on journalists illegally. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived in Islamabad, Pakistan for a 2-day visit to strengthen trade and economic ties. He was received by Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Erdogan will chair the 7th session of the Pakistan-Turkey High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council and sign several agreements. The visit aims to deepen bilateral relations and enhance cooperation between the two nations. over to some news now from the world of technology, where amid the ongoing Indian media versus OpenAI copyright battle, the tech giant has now claimed that it does not use any of the Indian media group's content to train its AI model ChatGPT. According to a 31-page court filing obtained by Reuters, OpenAI maintains it has no obligation to form partnerships with media organizations for the use of their publicly available material. OpenAI is under fire in India due to a major copyright dispute with the country's leading media organizations. More than 5 Indian media organizations have filed a lawsuit against OpenAI, accusing the company of, and I quote here, improperly using copyrighted content by scrapping and reproducing material from the news websites without permission. Meanwhile, OpenAI has said that copyright laws protect only expression, not facts, adding that the Indian lawsuit is jurisdictionally irrelevant. Riyadh successfully hosted the LEAP 2025 Tech Conference. The event saw cutting-edge technology in the fields of security, artificial intelligence and robotics on display. LEAP 2025 is a flagship Saudi event amid the nation's goal to become a global and regional tech hub. Visitors at the tech conference were greeted by robots. Also on display was a model of the Black Swan cargo by European drone maker Dronamics. And what's interesting is that while the Black Swan might look like a regular aircraft, it's actually unmanned. And that's not all. The company claims that the autonomous drone can cover all of Saudi Arabia in 5 hours. After a major shakeup caused by the Chinese AI model DeepSeek, the world might soon witness a launch of a similar model by UAE. A senior UAE official said that DeepSeek's challenge to American tech giants showed the field was wide open in the race for AI dominance. The oil-rich Gulf monarchy is betting big on transformational technology as part of its push to diversify its economy away from fossil fuels. Currently, UAE has 2 homegrown AI models, which are the Falcon, which was launched in 2023, and Jais, an Arabic language AI chatbot. The Indian rupee staged the biggest one-day jump in almost 2 years, but the gains may be short-lived due to monetary easing and rising global volatility. DBS Bank sees the currency weakening to 88.8 per dollar by mid-2025, while IDFC First Bank predicts a decline to 89.5 by December. The currency recorded its best one-day performance since March of 2023 on Tuesday. The rupee's recent gyrations mark a departure from its stability in the past 2 years. The move are also, in fact, these moves are also testing new central bank chief Sanjay Malhotra's tolerance in dealing with swings in foreign exchange market. Meanwhile, India's inflation eased to a 5-month low in January. Data showed on Wednesday that bolstering hopes of more rate cuts in the coming months. Now, oil extended losses after US President Donald Trump and his counterpart Vladimir Putin agreed to talks on ending the war in Ukraine. This raises speculation that risks to Russian supply may ease. Brent dropped below $75 per barrel after falling to 2.4% on Wednesday, the most in more than 2 months. Now, Trump said negotiations would start immediately and that he would probably meet Putin in Saudi Arabia in the not-too-distant future, according to a social media post, that is. Now, US sanctions on Moscow's oil sector have disrupted the flow of Russian crude, which helped to underpin gains in global oil benchmarks earlier this year. The market, however, has been swept up in Trump's various tariff salvos, which have weighed on sentiment and prices over the past 3 weeks. Indonesia is seeking to diversify its markets as global protectionism intensifies, while also taking steps to defend its local manufacturers. Donald Trump's plans for tariffs against countries ranging from Canada to China have stoked fears globally that all exporting nations may face more barriers to the world's biggest consumer market. On Wednesday, the European Union trade chiefs spoke to the US officials over their trade disputes, and all Canada's premiers were in Washington to lobby against import taxes. Now, the risk of global trade turmoil is making Indonesia take a measured stance. According to the country's deputy trade minister, it continues to seek more trade deals and tighten protection for local manufacturers from cheap imports dumped in its market. In the world of showbiz, Diddy has filed a lawsuit over a documentary that he claims falsely accuses him of being a serial murderer and having unconsented physical relations with underage girls. Combs claims that the documentary falsely portrays him as a serial murderer and trafficker, and that makers publish these statements with reckless disregard for the truth. He is seeking at least $100 million in damages. The lawsuit comes as Combs awaits trial on federal sex trafficking charges. In Germany, Berlin is gearing up to host the iconic festival. Organizers of this year's event hope that politics will not eclipse the movies this time around, even as they try to liven up an event that has looked jaded in recent years. The Berlinale has always been the most political of the big international film festivals, and this year's edition takes place days ahead of German elections. This year, the festival is headed by new director Tricia Tata. There are 19 films in competition this year for the Golden Bear top prize, and the event will continue till February 23rd. R. Kelly's racketeering and sex trafficking convictions, along with a 30-year prison sentence, were upheld on Wednesday by a federal appeals court that concluded the singer exploited his fame to sexually abuse girls and young women. The Grammy-winning songwriter was convicted in 2021 in Brooklyn Federal Court of multiple charges, including racketeering and sex trafficking. Last year, the High Court declined to hear an appeal of a 20-year sentence which Kelly had received after he was convicted of sexual abuse in Chicago. The iconic 1994 film Andaz Apna Apna, directed by Rajkumar Santoshi, has been restored and remastered in 4K and Dolby 5.1 sound. Although it initially underperformed at the box office, Andaz Apna Apna has since become a cult classic. The movie is cherished for its unforgettable camaraderie between Aamir Khan and Salman Khan. The 1994 cult classic is iconic not only for uniting two Bollywood Khans on screen, but also for boasting a talented ensemble cast, including Raveena Tandon, Karishma Kapoor, Paresh Rawal, and Shakti Kapoor in lead roles.